Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Cady Cantrell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Greener by Default, and we are delighted to be sponsoring this webinar today, featuring 3 expert chefs sharing insights about how to cope with a pressing issue facing institutional food service, egg shortages, and price spikes. Before we begin, I just wanted to say a few words about Greener by Default. We are a nonprofit that provides hands-on guidance and evidence-based consulting to institutional food service using behavioral science to craft plant-forward menus that all diners will love. We help hospitals, universities, corporations, and events get outside of the paradigm that vegetarian food is just for vegetarians. We do that by making delicious plant-based foods the default and giving diners a choice to opt into meat and dairy. This simple switch can have profound impacts, increasing consumption of plant-based foods by up to 50 percentage points, making food more healthy and accessible, and cutting costs and carbon footprint. One of the strategies that we recommend is what we call subtle substitutions, replacing animal-based ingredients with plant-based ingredients in dishes in which people won't even notice a difference, such as desserts and dressings. We've long advocated for the strategy as a way to make food accessible to diners with allergies or dietary restrictions, and as a way to cut carbon footprint. But now, removing eggs also has the significant added benefits of cutting costs and minimizing supply chain volatility, as the speakers will be discussing today. So now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Chef Nina Curtis.
I'm thrilled to be the moderator for today's webinar, hosted by Greener by Default, Foolproof Your Menu, Smart Strategies for Navigating this Egg Crisis that we're all in. And we remain in it. You know, it started off in January where I thought, oh, okay, it's going to come and go and we'll get through this. We've seen these things before, but it is still elevating up. And we know if we just take a snapshot of what's been taking place, we started off with the bird flu, the avian influenza, and millions of egg-laying hens were, culled to try to get control of this. And even with that, of course, we saw then these price surges and egg shortages that have impacted every kitchen, from home kitchens to commercial kitchens, at whatever size they're at. And it's not slowing down. I've been in healthcare for over 5 years. And so there are the nuances when we get into healthcare, schools, universities, and corporate entities that we have to take a look at. Can we foolproof ourselves so that we're not so challenged or thrown off our course when these things that we're seeing happen, such as with this egg crisis, and we know others continue to hit us time and time again, and we serve so many people that we have to have more than a backup, but a strategy, as today's webinar is here to share with you with our wonderful, innovative, and creative panelists that I'm so excited to be here with. What actions can you take within the next 24 hours to this week that will really have an impact on where you're at, your team, and the industry at large, because we all are collective. So we know we have the bird flu that's coming and going. It's not something that we're going to get taken care of and it's going to be gone. Egg shortages and price surges, that's also going to continue. But today, what I want to focus on, let's focus on how we create solutions. We know what's broken, our system in food, and I believe our guest speakers, our panelists are going to or would agree with me. We have a broken food system, and this is just one component of it, but it is a basic ingredient that we have to figure out, how do we deal with this? So I would like to get into the conversation because I'll weave and flow in and out with it. But I'd like to introduce our first panelist, that's Chef Rob Morasco. Welcome.
What I really want to talk about is my customers, right? Gen Z. And I don't know the market or the business that everybody works in. I think what's interesting about non-commercial food service is we have a lot of what I like to call fixed cost environments, right? Where we don't charge $5 for a breakfast sandwich or any other price. Folks who dine with us, in my case, swipe their card, they come in and eat whatever they want. We used to call it all you care to eat. We kept the acronym and now we call it anything you care to eat because that sounds way better than all you care to eat. It's a little less, freshman 15-ish. So I want to talk about my customers a little bit. I want to talk about breakfast because that's obviously eggs, breakfast, right? Let's talk about some different options, things we can do there. I want to talk about desserts because I think that's a really neat opportunity to do without eggs anyway. What do eggs really do for us? I know Cady will talk about this probably a little bit, but they really serve a function in desserts, not necessarily a flavor component, which I think is kind of interesting. Then I want to talk about just the guest experience because I think that's super, super important in our fixed cost environments. If you happen to work in one as well, you really got to pay attention to that because your guests are coming to eat with you because that's the choice they have, not because they heard how awesome of a chef I am, right? They're there because that's the option they have on campus, so they come to eat there. So we have to keep that in mind, right? We have a different, I think, responsibility in those cases, right? We know Gen Z are they're open to this idea of not eating eggs, I guess I'll say in the long run. 77% of them identify sustainability as a core value. 57% of them believe that plant-based foods are better for the environment. It should be higher, but I'll take 57. They associate plant-based foods with healthy or wellness or mindful. That's great. They are definitely, and this has not changed. This is still the same from when I started with the organization. They're flavor connoisseurs, right? They know more about food every single time I interact with a student. They know more about a cuisine, a culture, than they did the year before. And I think that's a pretty powerful statement. And they understand and they have more access to plant-based foods. They know what they are. I don't think any student I've ever talked to has never heard of Impossible, for example. They've all heard of it. How much they know about it, I'm not sure, but they know what it is. They've heard about it. So I think that's some four key pieces to help us, I think, on our journey. The next piece I like to talk about, and Cady and Greer by default, they know all about this, right? Like we it has to be equitable. It has to be whatever you're serving that's plant-based, doesn't matter what it is, something without eggs or something to take the place of eggs or something to take the place of chicken, whatever it may be. We have to appeal to people beyond people that identify as vegan and vegetarian. We absolutely have to, right? And to do that, they got to be relatable, approachable, and craveable. Jen DiFrancesco that I work with likes to say crave-worthy, and I love that word. Would I want to eat it regardless of what characteristics or what qualities I may assign to it? That's what equitability is all about. I talk to students a lot, and a lot of times they'll say, "Oh, I just want to have the same things my friends are eating." If they're having a taco like we see on the screen here, it's actually a plant-based chorizo taco, but their friends are having a conventional, or I like to say ordinary chorizo taco. We're going to have one and it's going to be made with mushrooms and lentils, or it's going to be a product we buy. They don't necessarily care so much about that part. They just want it to be just as good and the same as the thing their friends are having. And that's really what equitable is all about. I think when we walk into a dining facility and we say, "Hey, your plant-based stuff is over there in the corner, the sad brown stew with rice," it's just like, come on, folks, we could do better. And I think that's a big part of this journey and this exercise is that we know they're receptive to it. How are we making sure we make those changes if we reduce and remove the amount of eggs that we're serving and make sure that they're okay with it? I think that's really, really important. A little bit more about equitable and some things to illustrate. You can see the things on the top, very colorful and beautiful. I'd want to eat those. Things on the bottom, I'll eat them, but I'm not seeking those out, right? So I think that's an important play here. They will pay attention, 65%, if they find it appealing, like it looks great, it smells great, the description's good, they're probably going to try it, right? 51%, over 50% of them will try it. Forget about wellness and environmental sustainability, animal welfare. They'll try it just because it sounds interesting. So we got to remember that too. They're going to try it if it sounds pretty cool to them, right? So here's some examples. Let's talk about breakfast. This is an actual live example from our resident dining menus across the country that are happening right now, right? We've got all these things on the left, an omelet bar, French waffle bar, omelet bar again. We've got these things all pop up in our menu. So they're really great, right? If you're a student, you come in for breakfast, we've got a made to order omelet bar, right? We've got all the eggs and egg whites and plant-based eggs and all the different toppings, all the things, but we know that's costing us a lot more to execute right now, right? However, these things are all experiences. If you look at it, the French toast, the omelet, the cinnamon donut French toast, they're all experiences, right? So if you look at the things on the right, these were changes we recommended to our operators to change. When you read through these, a made-to-order pancake bar with fruit toppings, crunchy syrups, and whipped cream, that's just as good, if not better, from an experiential standpoint than the omelet bar. So if you change these things out 3 or 4, if you offer an omelet bar every day in your facility and you change it out 3 or 4 days a week with one of these options that are just just as impactful, just as delicious, just as crave-worthy as the omelet bar, students are going to love it. And I guarantee it. They'll be 100% on board with it. But these are just some great ideas. Breakfast is a really, really great opportunity. We serve a lot of eggs typically at breakfast. How do you make things so attractive that even if you're serving eggs still somewhere else in the dining facility, that they want to go get that hash brown potato bowl with the roasted veggies, harissa sauce, and tahini ranch? I could go for that too. Desserts is a whole other world, right? When we talk about stealth desserts and stealth egg-free, I'm sure Cady's going to talk about this a little bit. This is just a list of all of our recipes in our current database that are plant-based. And I think when we talk about equitable and we talk about approachable and recognizable, they're all things that we've all probably heard of. They just happen to be plant-based versions of those things, right? So it's really I want to share this with everybody just from an ideation standpoint. Students are going to eat a cherry turnover probably regardless if it's got animal products in it or not, or eggs in it or not, right? They're going to try that and want to eat that. I've got a whole other page more. These are really, really great. They're whether or not you have the recipe or not, it's a great ideation for you to get started with, to start thinking about how do I serve less eggs in my operation today, right? I think breakfast, like I said before, is a really, really easy way to offer some things as long as they're experiential, and desserts is a stealth thing. So to kind of bring it all back home, right? I don't think you can do any of this stuff if you don't focus on the guest, right? So big impacts are these customizable, these made to order, like the hash brown thing I shared, or the pancake, or whatever it is. If it's made to their desire and their customization, they can pick what they want, what they don't want. I want a little extra cream. I don't want the sprinkles, whatever it is. That always has a bigger impact with our customer than just things out there like a buffet, right? So I think thinking about that customization piece is huge. Variety, this doesn't necessarily only relate to this topic that we're talking about today, but I think our customers, that because they're different, like I said before, they eat with us every day, typically, right? And in the campus world, sometimes 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, right? Um, I don't think they necessarily define variety as how much stuff they see when they walk into the cafe. They may think about it, how often it changes, and when it does, what does it do? I think that's a neat opportunity for us to offer the pancake bar or some of those things in a different way, showing them a different variety every day. You don't have to have omelet bar every day. I've talked to our operators and I say it all the time. Yes, our students love hamburgers, but do we have to serve them at every meal every day, or can we do it, every once in a while, right? Do they need to have that? I don't think they really do. Elevate the details. When I walk into a dining operation, I still do the same thing I did 28 years ago. I walk in and I say, I try the pizza, I try the pasta, I try the soup, and I usually go and see what we're doing with desserts. Why? Because those are the low cost things that are super, super popular, right? Students love to eat all those things. And in this case, talking about this, they directly compete with the egg dishes, right? So if you have a toast bar, made to order toast bar or self-serve toast bar, what does that look like? Do you have all the right toppings and the things to make it attractive? Is your butter spreadable, or is it a brick where the customer has to try to dig it out of there and try to spread it on their toast? Those details really, really matter if we're going to compete with the egg dish or whatever it is we might be serving. Continental breakfast, all those things. Are they really looking nice? Are they really looking great to compete? I'll remind everyone, I really think the more you can keep it equitable to what they would normally see, so there's not a decline, I think that's important, right? The sad brown stew reference, I think that applies here too. If you're doing some kind of tofu scramble or something, I'm sure Cady's got lots of fun things she's going to recommend. Those got to be presented really, really well, and they got to look fantastic. They got to be described well. Otherwise, it's going to be like a step down, right? And then people are going to say, what are we doing? Why are we doing that? And I would say for sure, don't just one day we're done serving eggs, right? You got to have that plan. What's that plan look like? If you have a client that you work with at your site, you got to review this plan with them. I'm sure they would agree with you about the desire to keep costs in line and also to keep their customers happy. So I think as long as the lines of communication are open with your clients and your customers, you can have success here. And really, really focus on that guest
Please
experience.
help me welcome Chef Cady. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for the introduction. Today I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about the work we've done in Cherry Creek School District to minimize our reliance on eggs. I'll share a little context of our district and then the process that we went through, and then I'll also share some of those outcomes. So Cherry Creek School District, we are a large suburban district, again, just outside of Denver, Colorado. We have 53,000 students across 65 schools, meaning 65 kitchens. And we're serving 40,000 meals a day, and that includes breakfast and lunch. Over half of our meals are made from scratch, and that number will continue to rise as we add more recipes each year. And then our district has a production kitchen, which produces 1,200 meals a day. And those meals are delivered hot to our charter schools and what we call our special programs. So our special programs are like a suspension program, a homeschool program. We have a mental health outpatient program, which is amazing, first of its kind in the country. And all of these different programs provide awesome resources to our students. However, sadly, the kitchen was not included in the budget. So we have a production kitchen where we're able to provide really nice hot meals to these students each day. And then we also have a central bakery in our district. And the central bakery is very similar to a central kitchen, which I think more people are familiar with, except it has commercial baking equipment, and we make just baked goods. And all of those baked goods are then distributed to our 65 schools. In our district, as I mentioned, we're serving 40,000 meals a day. And with that, and this was touched on a little bit before, but with that comes a lot of students with special diets and allergies. Milk and eggs are two of our most frequent allergies. Gluten is also, but given the fact that we're a bakery, we decided to not mess with that one. But we as a team, through discussion, decided that we wanted to see if we could remove eggs and dairy as an allergen. And this was 2 years ago, probably in April 2023, right towards the end of the school year when we kind of start thinking about what we want to do for the next year. We decided to see if we could remove those 2 allergens, but we were happy with our product as is. So what we decided to do is test a version that's dairy-free, test a version that's egg-free, and test a version that's egg and dairy-free, but also with no pressure and no stress, knowing that we were happy with what we were doing. So if for some reason it wasn't working, we could just continue to feed kids the way we were. The dairy that we used in all of our products was just milk powder and water combined. So the first thing we did for testing dairy-free was just removing the milk powder, but keeping the water. So we didn't really test with any plant-based milks or anything like that. And I will also add, just as a quick side note, our entire school operation is nut-free. So we do not use any nuts just because of the anaphylactic risk is with young students. It's not one that we want to take. So the removal of milk was just removing the milk powder and replacing it with just water. That was easy peasy. Nothing needed to be changed. You literally could have them side by side and not even tell the difference. When I'm looking at egg replacements and dairy replacements, the first thing that I have to consider is, will this increase my cost? And if it will, it's not an option. The other thing that I have to consider because of the scale of our operation is, how are we going to bring in this product? My goal was for it to be something that my mainline distributor already carried. So it's not a special order. It's not something I have to go out to bid for or anything like that. So the first thing that kind of popped out to the entire team on that list for replacing eggs was applesauce. We already serve applesauce in the schools. We bring it in number 10 cans. I know that my mainline distributor can, 1, provide it, and 2, provide it in volume. And it's not introducing any allergies, and applesauce is relatively affordable. So we decided to test with applesauce first, and we tweaked it a couple times. We maybe did 4 or 5 tests total, where we played around with the amount of applesauce and we increased the amount of baking powder to get that rise there. But we didn't want to increase the baking powder so much that it has that like metallic taste to the bread. So we tweaked it back and forth a little bit and ended up with a product that removed the milk powder. So just had the water, no milk powder. We removed all of our liquid eggs and replaced it with applesauce, and then just increasing our baking powder. And then it was honestly really good. But instead of advertising the removal of these allergens, instead what we did was really just advertise the product. And we started doing a weekly cafeteria taste test where our bakery team from our central bakery would go out to an elementary school and provide a cafeteria taste test with samples during lunch period. And I think you can see here from these smiling faces that they were pretty successful. And again, when we're presenting these samples to our kids, we're not telling them about what is or isn't in it. We're just saying, here's a whole wheat piece of bread. We serve it at breakfast. We serve it at lunch. We'd love for you to try it. And the kids love it. And 2 school years ago when we started this, we did 14 taste tests and 3,700 samples. This year, it was so successful, we expanded it this year. This year, we've done 25 schools and over 12,000 samples, and we still have a month and a half left of school, so we'll get some more in. So since we have switched from our eggs and dairy to no eggs and no dairy, we've had a couple of really fantastic outcomes. The first, in my role as executive chef, I think in a functional manner is the most important. The first is we have reduced our food cost by about $26,000 a year. $26,000. That's insane, right? Especially because for us, that was not actually our driving reason for doing this. And this was 2 years ago before, I think 2 years ago, there was a little bit of an egg crisis then, because I think this comes and goes. But this really wasn't driven by a specific egg crisis or egg cost. And this was just such a huge added benefit. Again, when we only have $1.50 in food cost, $26,000 is beyond impactful for our budget. Next, we have increased inclusivity. So we have hundreds of kids that are now able to eat our scratch-made, low-sugar, whole wheat products from our bakery. And previously, if you had an egg or dairy allergy, we would still give you a breakfast, but it would be a higher processed, higher sugar, wrapped product that, it's important to us that we're feeding the kids, but we weren't really excited to be giving this product. And now we have all of these kids that are able to have this amazing item that they weren't previously able to access. And then lastly, we've had a reduced carbon output, net decrease of approximately 22,000 kilograms of CO2, which is a huge sustainability aspect. And again, the biggest thing we wanted was this increased inclusivity. We in school food do what we do because we want to feed kids. And when we can't feed kids or we can't feed all of the kids because of these obstacles, we want to do what we can to remove those obstacles. But then we have all these other benefits added. When we're feeding kids, I think we also have to think about what is the longer term impact of this. Are we developing healthy patterns? Are we serving food that's culturally relevant? And are we using our procurement power, which is massive in school food? In school food, we serve over 30 million meals or over 30 million lunches every single day across the country. So the procurement power of K-12 districts is unmatched. So if we take that procurement power and we use it in a way where we're sourcing sustainably, how is that going to impact our environment long term? And I think we always think in the short term, we're giving food security right now. And I really want to start shifting that to include that, but also think long term, are we providing that climate security for kids 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now?
What was one of the most surprising challenges you've come across through this journey?
The funny thing is, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I don't really have a story of challenge here, which maybe should be the takeaway is this was really easy. I feel like our recipe testing was a quick process because the applesauce worked right away. And in addition to it being easy, the positive outcomes were like tenfold than what our original intentions were. So as much as I'd like to share, a story of resilience and overcoming obstacles, this was not a challenge. I think anyone could do this.
I just really, really want to thank our panelists. I want to thank everyone that tuned in. I specifically want to thank Greener by Default for hosting this because it's so timely and we're getting a lot of information out there, but we can come always together as a collective and know that our experiences collectively will, keep us moving forward. I want to share with you, if your institution is ready to future-proof your menu, reduce cost, and stay ahead of the curve with plant-based strategies, Greener by Default is here to support you, and it's what they do. You can reach out to them by just sending an email to info@greenerbydefault.org. That's info@greenerbydefault.org, and you can start the conversation. It's that easy. Why wait? Start today. Even if you're not even sure what you think you need, just go ahead and send an email and we can get that conversation going. And with that, I'm your BFF plant-based chef, Nina Curtis. I am wishing you all smart menus, sustainable choices, and sunny side up success.